Ever since Christian Horner was shown the door at Red Bull last July, Formula One hasn't managed a quiet moment without his name slipping back into the conversation. And fair enough, depending on how strictly you apply your moral compass these days, his absence was never going to last. Whatever you make of Horner and the way he juggles his personal life, the simple truth remains. If you're that good at assembling multiple World Championship winning teams, it takes an absolutely seismic transgression for the paddock to forget you. And no, Formula One hasn't forgotten him for a second. Which brings us to the present, where Horner has been linked with just about every team under the sun. Some suggestions, like Alpine and Haas, have been borderline fever dreams, but one rumor simply refuses to die: Ferrari. And it's because that one actually makes sense. Since John Elkann took over Ferrari in mid-2018, the team has been unsatisfactory. They've claimed just 15 wins in 160 races, collected 0 championships of either variety, and somehow managed 3 separate winless seasons. Unless a miracle drops into their lap soon, they're about to complete a 2-season shutout, with only 3 races left in 2025, and the odds of a double DNF looking significantly higher than a victory. So, yes, something has to change in Maranello. Elkann seems convinced the issue lies with the drivers, but he's already had 3 world champions pass through during his tenure, and Leclerc is well on his way to becoming the most point-rich driver never to win a title. So perhaps, just perhaps, it's not the drivers, John. He's praised the engineers, praised the mechanics. So who's left? The team principal. And while Elkann has been busy trying to blend in with the everyday masses, he's also been handing out job titles and contract extensions to bosses who haven't exactly earned them. At some point, logic points you to the most successful team principal of the modern era, one who just happens to have a great deal of spare time. When Franz Beckenbauer coached West Germany in the 1980s, he didn't have the proper license, so he was dubbed the team chef instead of head coach. That's exactly the sort of role Horner could play at Ferrari. Beckenbauer won a World Cup by choosing the right ingredients. Team chef Horner has done the same at Red Bull. Granted, it helps when your ingredients include Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen. Christian Horner has the time, the resume, and the temperament. And really, where better to achieve something spectacular than at Scuderia Ferrari? He's the most qualified man available, and he'd have Leclerc and Hamilton back on side in no time. If Horner proved anything during his 2 decades at Red Bull, it's that he stands by his drivers, no matter what. And that brings us to Ferrari's current crossroads. Because while the idea of Horner sweeping into Maranello with a chef's hat and a blueprint for glory is an entertaining one, the real world of Formula One doesn't stand still just to indulge rumor. As questions continue to swirl around Fred Vasseur's tenure as Ferrari team principal, the sport's ever-spinning rumor mill has naturally floated Horner as a potential successor. But he's not the only name in the hat, nor increasingly the most realistic. Another figure has surged to the front of the queue: Antonello Coletta, the man who just guided Ferrari to a 3rd consecutive victory at the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans and capped the year with a championship double, their first since Kimi Räikkönen and Ferrari clinched the 2007 F1 title. In fact, on the very day Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari's prize signing for 2025, was being unceremoniously dumped out of Q2 in Brazil, Coletta's crew was busy celebrating both the drivers' and manufacturers' titles in the WEC season finale in Bahrain talk about contrasting fortunes. To be fair, Ferrari has done everything it can to smother the noise around Vasseur's future. First came a fresh, multi-year contract before the summer break. Then came John Elkann's dreaded vote of confidence following the US Grand Prix, the kind of public endorsement that, historically, tends to precede a sacking rather than prevent one. Yet, the criticism directed at Vasseur has drifted into a strangely personal realm. Certain corners of the Italian media seem determined not to rest until he pays for Ferrari's lackluster campaign with his job. And history tells us that once the pressure reaches this stage, Ferrari team principals rarely emerge unscathed, contract extension or not. So, if Horner is unavailable, unapproachable, or simply uninterested, the most logical move might be staring Ferrari in the face. Why go hunting for a savior when one is already in the building? Coletta represents the ultimate in-house solution. Promote the man who's already delivering championships elsewhere under the Prancing Horse banner. Rumours in Italy over the summer even claimed that Coletta had previously been offered the team principal role and turned it down, and that, should Vasseur exit, he wouldn't be given the option to decline a second time. All of this, the swirling rumours, the pressure on Vasseur, the whispers about Coletta, raises an uncomfortable question for Ferrari. What if the issue isn't the team principal at all? Because according to former F1 driver Juan Pablo Montoya, the real problem runs far deeper. In a blunt and scathing assessment of the Scuderia, Montoya argues that politics inside Ferrari is the team's biggest problem. His comments came shortly after Ferrari president John Elkann publicly criticised both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, declaring that the team have drivers who need to focus on driving and talk less. Speaking to AS Colombia, Montoya didn't mince his words in response. The reason he said that is because there's some internal pressure against him. The best way to combat it is to reflect it outward, but you have to realize at some point that the way things are being done isn't working. The biggest problem at Ferrari is politics, a lot of politics. Ferrari's situation hardly helps their case. With just 3 races remaining in the 2025 season, the team is staring down the barrel of its first winless campaign since the bleak days of 2020, when the Scuderia slumped to P6 in the constructors' standings. Montoya then shifted to the on-track side of Ferrari's struggles, zeroing in on the SF25's performance at Interlagos, particularly Hamilton's race, which was compromised almost immediately after Turn 1 contact with Carlos Sainz left the Brit with damage. Look at the onboard footage of Max Verstappen, who's behind Lewis, that car of Lewis. My God. The Ferrari isn't good over bumps, but I don't understand. It's like you need 2 brain cells to realize how bad they are. At some point, you have to let your guard down and say, hey, I was wrong. What we're doing isn't working. Let's try something different. And Montoya isn't the only one raising eyebrows at Ferrari's internal dynamics. Former F1 team boss Guenther Steiner also weighed in, making it clear he felt Elkann's public criticism was out of line. Reflecting on the Ferrari chairman's remarks, Steiner said, "He is allowed to critique because in the end he's the boss, but I think he shouldn't do that in public." While Steiner agreed that Elkann may have had a point regarding Hamilton, he rejected the criticism of Leclerc entirely, arguing that the whole episode exposed flawed leadership, especially given that Fred Vasseur's name was conspicuously absent from Elkann's public scolding. With Lewis, you know, but Charles, the guy puts his heart and soul into this, everything. What more do you want from Charles? It is not showing good leadership, saying this guy's doing it right. The mechanics are good, the engineers are good, but you guys are bad in public. And no comment about Fred Vasseur. I find it weird, to say the least, to make a comment like this from a person at that level of the company, the highest level. He doesn't have to ask anybody to do it or not to do it. Steiner didn't stop there. He went on to question why Elkann was criticizing Hamilton at all when the chairman himself would have had to approve signing the 7-time world champion in the first place. According to Steiner, Elkann would do well to acknowledge his own role, especially considering the emotional whiplash of Ferrari's weekend, clinching both WEC titles while suffering a brutal double DNF in the Brazilian Grand Prix. Also, who decided the drivers? Sometimes you have to look in the mirror. For sure he agreed to hire Lewis. That's my understanding, Steiner said. I criticized this guy, but I picked him. Maybe I've done something wrong. If he made the wrong decision, if he feels so. I don't know what Hamilton and Leclerc said. I don't get it. Maybe he was a little bit emotional when he said it. They won the championship and didn't even get in the points. Both cars dropped out in Brazil. Can you imagine how disappointed he was? Maybe he was a bit pissed off. So, if John Elkann keeps deflecting blame onto his drivers and cycling through team principles, will he ever confront the role he plays in Ferrari's stagnation? Or will it take the sight of Christian Horner walking into Maranello and winning races with Lewis Hamilton to finally expose where the real power problem lies? Let's talk about it in the comments. And as always, Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest in Formula One. Thanks for watching.